Today we're going to save... Let's see. Just give me a moment while I check it for a one-way trip. Gran Canaria to Antigua and Barbuda. €538. Today we're going to save ourselves €538 on crossing the Atlantic, in this case on a super luxury catamaran. Luxury deluxe, but not those deluxe ones. Little deluxe products. Deluxe but for real. Greetings sailors, and welcome to a new episode of The Low-Cost Sailor. There are many ways to cross an ocean, from the most common one by plane, €535, to the most outlandish versions you can imagine. The Atlantic, ever since it was first crossed in a caravel. No, I said in a caravel, or not in a scull, right? It's been crossed in the strangest ways you could possibly imagine. Rowing, windsurfing, paddleboarding, swimming, even crossing it by car. But in a car packed with polyurethane foam, just letting the current carry them. There are all kinds of people. Anyway, we're not that adventurous. Let's look for a much more comfortable way. Remember, we aspire to have a house in Andorra to cross the Atlantic. Because if you're lovers of boating and the sea, surely one of your ambitions is to cross the Atlantic by boat. And that's what we're going to do in this episode. And what's more, without spending a dime, let's see how to cross the Atlantic by sail for free. Even beyond that, we're crossing the Atlantic for free on a luxury catamaran.
I'm leaving. I'm going to pack my suitcase.
No, Carlos, that plural was a royal plural. You don't need to pack your suitcase.
This seems awful to me. You're going to cross the Atlantic in a luxury catamaran and leave me here?
No, man, no. I would never do that to you. How could I do that to you? No, I'm not taking you. No, it's that I'm not going. Me neither. What do you think? How was I going to tell Lara that with 2 one-month-old babies I'm going to cross the Atlantic? I tell him that, and he tells me to go without any problem. But to go forever. I'm sure there will already be an opportunity for us to cross the Atlantic ourselves. I'm sure one of our followers will offer us one of those opportunities. One of these years, if possible, one when we can. But this time we've had to delegate, and we've delegated it to one of our most regular collaborators. Hello Marta, welcome aboard our rather humble little vessel.
A pleasure, like when I helped you with the Cube episode or the Smoke one.
Well, we have Marta here with us, the one who crossed the Atlantic, so tell us. How is it that you're going to do an interview? But let's see, this is a boating channel. Where I'm from, interviews on boating channels are done while sailing. Come on, head out, head out. But wasn't this a podcast? Pull over there. Come on.
Let's go!
Hold up, come on. We set sail. Let go of this and toss it onto the dock. Okay, then we're heading out. Like this? Yes, just like this. Yes. An interview on a nautical train is done while we're actually sailing. Here in the Northern Caribbean, in Santander Bay,
It's a bit colder than I expected, but hey, it's fine.
Well, Marta, who are you exactly?
Well, look, I came through here along the dock and I got on the boat under the pretext that I'd cross the Atlantic, and that was that. Just to go out sailing for a little while since the weather was nice. That was the plan, right?
Yeah, you sound familiar. Your face looks familiar. I think you've been in some episode of The Low-Cost Sailor.
Yes, I like doing cameos.
But I don't know if anyone knows you besides us, so if you could tell us who you are.
Well, I'm Marta Arroyo. I've been sailing as a hobby for quite some time now. And in the summer, I devote myself to taking people out on a boat, which is what I like, under the pseudonym Captain Yogui.
A pseudonym like the great writers.
Like the truly great writers, Kapitan Yogi.
Links in the description. And how long has it been? Like, how did you get into sailing? Because have you always sailed since you were a girl?
No, not at all, actually. Great anecdotes, because I grew up in Santander my whole life. My mom tried to sign me up for dinghy sailing when I was little, so I would have been a great sailor, one of those who have salt water in their veins and all that. I said I wasn't interested. It was cold, raining, and I'd rather paint.
Well, crap, the sea is such a drag.
And then sailing came into my life, like all the great things in my life, by chance. So when I moved to Madrid, I saw a discount voucher to get my PER on those sites like Groupon, Grupalia, those that gave you big discounts. And I signed up and I really liked it. And basically all the way up to today.
And you got your PER. Did you keep going with other certifications? How far did you get?
Yes, I got my PER. And since I really liked it, the practice weekend seemed awesome to me.
Your mother will be fuming and saying, and she didn't want to go.
Sometimes she reminds me of that. I really loved it, and I kind of have to keep going somehow. Obviously, buying a boat wasn't really within my budget, so I went ahead and got my yacht skipper license, especially because back then you actually needed the yacht skipper license to make the crossing from the mainland over to the Balearic Islands. And I got my yacht skipper certification, and I thought I'd stop right there. But then I paused for a moment and thought, what if people don't want to sail with me because they have kids, because they have responsibilities? So what if I become a professional skipper? And then I said, well, okay, I became a yacht captain and then a professional skipper.
And professional skipper is a certification you get after yacht captain, which involves taking a whole bunch of courses.
It's quite a few practical courses, and then there's a multiple choice theory exam, which is mostly legislation and things like that.
Does it last forever, or do you need to renew it?
No, you have to renew it. You have to renew it by taking courses. I actually need to check it because I think it expires next year, but yes.
And you have to, because, for example, professional licenses, not recreational ones, require you to document sailing hours so they don't take it away from you. In other words, you have to be sailing continuously.
Yes, you have to do it. When they give it to you the first time, you have to make a sworn statement that you've done a certain number of miles and met certain requirements that I don't remember right now, but...
And you actually did them. I definitely remember that you did them.
I do sail quite a lot.
Well, so you got into it. Now you're a total sea nut, I understand. Mostly because of your adventures.
A crazy woman who's sometimes at sea?
From sea and yoga.
Yes, that's it, the sea and yoga.
The two hobbies that you combine into your own pseudonym and on your Instagram page.
I've done what I wanted, and what I want to do is do... Because I think I combine yoga and sailing very well. It's like relaxed. There you connect with. And then I'd like to do Balearic yoga retreats in the summer, combining it. For now, I only do the sailing part. I still haven't integrated the yoga part yet.
So this year you were there doing your usual winter things, which aren't really sailing. And how did the opportunity to cross the Atlantic come up for you?
Well, the story is that every year I try to improve something, I try to learn something, I try to improve my sailing skills. And so for 2021, my goal was to sign up to do regattas, because I thought, hey, I'm going to learn to trim the sails better, I'm going to learn to read the wind better. Well, I was going to improve my sailing skills. And then I started looking, and I was very lucky to come across a sailing club in the Denia area, the Kim Club, and to meet Jean and Cheeky. And well, I went with them to do regattas, and after a short time being there, they say to me, well, maybe we're going to cross the Atlantic, maybe you can come along.
And you really did.
I was blown away, like when I finally managed to close my mouth.
You acted all nonchalant like, well, another Atlantic crossing for me, right? And inside I was bursting with excitement.
Yeah, no, it's just that crossing the Atlantic in the end is something you have there. That's a possibility. I didn't see it either. I mean, I didn't see it as close at all because it's something that doesn't seem easy to me. I mean, it's possible, but it doesn't seem easy to me. You've really got to get yourself around to it. And I said, damn, well, I'm not going to get another opportunity quite like this one. It was a great boat. The boat is an absolutely incredible catamaran. I was going to go with a captain who knows a whole lot, and I was going to learn so much from him. And it's like, this is truly a gift. I really couldn't have been any luckier.
We might have to take a look at some point, because this isn't like in the Atlantic, where you can just stick to one heading.
I was about to go to sleep. I believed my watch was ending. My half-hour watch was coming to an end before...
So we don't come in and slam hard against the dock. We have to turn, so let's get ready, make a small, gentle turn, and we'll keep talking again in 3, 2, 1. Well, so there you are. You're really eager to do it because they tell you there's a possibility of crossing the Atlantic, but my favorite word at that moment came up.
What's your favorite word?
My favorite word. Free.
Sure. Would you like to take me across the Atlantic at no cost?
If you tell yourself that, if they tell you so.
They didn't tell me that outright, but it was definitely implied. But in reality, the costs are the ship's provisioning costs. In the end, the ship owner covers the costs related to the ship, and the crew covered the expenses for their own food, basically.
In the end, you still have to feed yourself the whole way.
I was going to eat anyway.
At home, you eat too. And that really is usually how it is. It's usually someone who needs to relocate it, because the boat needed to be moved for some reason, I imagine.
Yes, the ship owner wanted to spend the winter season in the Caribbean, and then the captain would take the ship over to the Caribbean.
So usually that's how it is. And are there a lot of people who sign on in ports? Because where did you set off from?
I left from Gran Canaria. The boat moved from Valencia. Well, the boat was already coming from France, but the first time I got on was in Valencia, and I was leaving from Gran Canaria. But anyway, it's pretty common to go to ports in Gran Canaria, ports in the Canary Islands in general, and look around for a boat that wants to make the crossing and needs crew members.
The more prepared you are, the more attractive you'll be as a crew member for one of those boats.
Yes, particularly if you know how to cook. It's probably the most important thing that you can actually know how to do.
Normally, there's always someone who can navigate, the one who goes on the boat.
Let's see if you can sail. In the end, the crew is truly necessary to stand watch and above all, to keep daily life running smoothly on board. Let's see if you also know a little about mechanics and electricity and all that. You would be the ideal candidate. In fact, I think they have your photo at the marinas.
Wanted as a crew member. Interesting.
And then afterward, or even before that, cooking. Food is something very important when you're crossing the Atlantic. It's the go-to topic of conversation.
The biggest change during the whole crossing is, what are we eating today?
Exactly, that's the topic of conversation. In fact, if I'd had more time to prepare, if I'd known I was going to cross the Atlantic, I would have learned some recipes. Because I'm kind of a disaster in the kitchen.
And you showed up thinking, well, nothing. This is it. When I get there, I'll look up recipes online and I'll become a magnificent cook.
There's no internet?
Was there no internet? Thank you for the interview. Let's turn.
Are you ready?
Yes, we turned. Well then. Of course, the boat you went on was nothing like this one.
It wasn't anything like this one?
It wasn't a 6-meter sailboat either, nor a small one. What boat was it?
It turned out to be a 20-meter catamaran, more specifically a Privilege 6.
Privilege already sounds rather expensive, because otherwise they would probably call it normal edge or maybe Kutrelek, which would be the one I would actually cross on.
And the truth is that the boat is completely and fully equipped. What an absolutely incredible, amazing boat. I honestly didn't know there could be dishwashers and washing machines on boats until I actually got on that one.
And it's a boat that will be either privately owned or used as a charter.
from a private owner.
So you've got it right there. You moved it. Did you go from Gran Canaria to...
We went from Gran Canaria to Antigua, but we passed through Cape Verde, which normally would have been the usual route.
The usual route to cross the Atlantic, right?
Heading down with the trade winds. Yes, we stopped in Cape Verde because we had a problem with the engine, with one of the engines, and then we stopped there to get the repairs done, which luckily were finished fairly quickly.
Next year, I'll know how to repair the engines while we're underway, so it's really not a big deal. And then, obviously, I suppose anyone following us knows the boat would have its engines, right? It'll have some great engines, but you don't cross the Atlantic on the engine because the engine is kind of irrelevant from the point.
From that perspective, in the end, the engine is absolutely necessary. We didn't really know what kind of wind we were going to have over those 2 weeks, and hey, if you truly need to get there, you can always turn it on. But when it comes time to maneuver, when you finally arrive, you might still need it. In any case, the crossing from Cape Verde to Martinique, because before we eventually got to Antigua, we first stopped in Martinique. Yes, we stopped in Martinique. We did it under sail the whole time, 100%.
Well, maybe it had its own power generation. Did it have a generator? I mean, you didn't even run the engines to charge the batteries, and you had solar panels and that kind of thing. Or was it one that used diesel?
It ran on diesel power. It was a privileged sailboat.
On that route, at the stops, you have to provide more now with the coronavirus and all of that. You had to present the paperwork. Did you do that thing of putting up the flag of...
When you arrived, there was the yellow quarantine flag. Then you had to go to the harbor master's office and do all of the check-in and the check-out for the whole crew in the country. They asked you for the COVID documentation, if I'm remembering correctly. It's just that all of that in the end, we gave the captain the passport and he had everything and he went back and forth and did what was necessary, but the process was pretty fast.
But the stops? Otherwise you wouldn't have made the stops?
No, the initial plan was to go straight ahead, maybe pass somewhere near Cape Verde, but not make any stops.
Yes, because the route is there for any possible case. And also to detour a little so you can stay near safe places if you have any problem. Well, I suppose it's a common practice. Well, I imagine the stops are fine. Cape Verde! I've always wanted to go, and obviously I want to go to any island in the Caribbean. Where do I want to go? I want to go anywhere that isn't to the supermarket to buy diapers. I think my wife also wants to go...
We went to Cape Verde to buy food. Our obsession was food.
The key to any Atlantic crossing is the food.
Well, I don't know if it's from just anyone, but ours was food. It's the only one I've done. When I do more, I'll let you know.
What's day-to-day life like, and how long does it take? First, how long did it take you, and how long does it usually take?
Well, from Gran Canaria to Cape Verde, it took us roughly about 5 or 6 days. And then the crossing from Cape Verde to Martinique took about 10 or 11 days. I think it didn't even quite reach 2 full weeks. We went really fast.
It's obviously a pretty fast boat. How fast exactly?
Well, about 8 knots more or less.
8 knots? I haven't seen 8 knots. I saw 8 knots on this boat once. It looked like it was going to fall apart. And I assure you that when I was going on this boat at 8 knots, I wouldn't have dared to cook. I guarantee you that. What is daily life like when you're crossing the Atlantic? Because obviously there's no Netflix. You can't watch episodes of The Low-Cost Sailor.
You downloaded it before you left. Watch out for that because you download all the episodes of The Low-Cost Sailor before heading out and that's it. It's all set.
Essential for anything in the Atlantic. So what's daily life like?
There were 7 of us and we stood watch over a full 24-hour day. They were fairly relaxed watches since there were quite a few of us. So we did every 6 hours we took a watch.
Every 6 hours? Each of you did a 1-hour watch on your own. Definitely. I'm getting ready to cross the Atlantic because every 3 hours I do a full 1-hour shift, day and night, to bottle feed.
You're getting ready, but with a relatively small crew.
I can practically cross alone just to get some rest. To rest, I would actually be resting, without a doubt. And then you have your 1-hour watch every...
Yes, I had my watch shifts at 12 at night, at 6 in the morning, at 12 at noon, and at 6 in the afternoon.
Okay, so there were 7 of you, but it was your turn every 6 hours, so the captain has some privilege.
Of course he has to handle us.
Well, during the first watches he won't trust you, and after that he'll sleep soundly.
Or perhaps he still didn't fully trust us, which is certainly also a very real possibility.
When you're on watch, are you actually at the helm? Or is it running on autopilot?
The autopilot was on the whole way. Yes, because on top of that, it's a straight shot. The wind was pretty much in the same conditions the entire time. The swell was coming the whole time from the quarter. In terms of navigation, it's really not the most risky or groundbreaking navigation in all of history. It's pretty much the same all the way throughout the whole time.
Yeah, you don't really need to be trimming or changing sails pretty much ever.
No, I mean, the really cool thing about this boat was that it had a ton of different sails. It had a Gennaker and it had a Code Zero. We definitely did put the sails up and we were changing them based on what Jan was telling us. He would be the one calling it. Yeah, at night there was a more conservative strategy just in case the wind picked up or whatever. Yeah, you'd put up tougher sails and we would reduce the sail area and all of that, but there weren't any tacks and jibes and things like that because we were always about 5 degrees a little lower.
There was almost no heeling, hardly any at all, because it was a catamaran.
You don't really get the feeling of truly enormous waves. Besides, it's a very tall catamaran, so the waves, even if they were 3 meters high, would still only come up to about your ankle, because you were already very elevated above the surface of the water.
And for the rest of the day, what do you do when you're there?
Crossing the Atlantic, thinking about food, thinking,
what will you do for meals that day? Or what will they make for you? You'd be into it. Yoga?
I hadn't been doing yoga, so we started doing it. We set up our own little gym, a gym out in the Atlantic, and then we do a few exercise routines. We started out as 2, and then the rest of the crew gradually joined in. I learned how to make a chocolate cake, which I didn't know how to do before. We played cards, we played dice, and we watched a series every now and then. It was a fairly family-like kind of life. We played games and we watched a movie every now and then.
There was a television and a couch for certain. I'm guessing that to work out you would have taken a Xiaomi mini bike and fitted it with a generator motor.
I think that episode hadn't come out yet. That episode came out afterward, and when I saw it, I was like, man, if I'd known.
But let's go ahead and turn before we end up crashing. Let's turn, guys. These slow looks are kind of like migrant slow, as they say.
If you then speed it up or play it back at double speed, it kind of looks like we're sailing even faster.
Well, we've got it under control because we do it calmly.
Imagine it in really strong wind. We're really dealing with it.
With the wind force, I'm able to catch things by using my hands. What were the best and the worst parts of the experience for you? Aside from free, what do you mean by free?
Well, what I liked the most was that, on the one hand, it was the overall experience, which wasn't really all that nautical, but instead felt much more personal, being totally cut off for 3 weeks, meaning having absolutely no access to the outside world. And the crew that was on the boat too. The crew was actually pretty cool. I met some really interesting people, and we ended up forming a kind of family for about 2 weeks. I was very, very comfortable. The sense of isolation was basically zero. There was an email address and you could make calls, but it was only for emergency situations. For example, I didn't use it in...
None? Were you getting weather reports? Would you carry an Iridium Go, or some stuff like that? And the worst part, if there's anything bad.
There's nothing bad, but I'd say the worst part, against all expectations, was having so many comforts that it kind of takes away just a bit of the adventure vibe of being out in the Atlantic, being right in the middle of nowhere, and having someone ask you whether you've got anything you want to put in the washing machine. It was kind of strange. I mean, it really didn't match my preconceived idea of it. I mean...
You even had a toilet too.
Well, of course. And it was totally...
It was a toilet, not a restroom. And once you get there, to Antigua and Barbuda, what happens to the catamaran? What happens to you? You have to get out of here fast. Okay, that's it. We're here, guys. Everyone out.
Well, once we arrived in Antigua, we had to spend a few days really tidying up the boat, cleaning it thoroughly, and getting it into reasonably decent shape for when the owners arrived. And the ship continued steadily along its course because its destination was St. Martin, and there was a specific date when the owner would arrive, and on that date the ship, obviously, was intended for the ship owner and his family. So that was the date when we actually had to leave. But until then, we could disembark pretty much whenever it worked best for us. So personally, I got off in Antigua. Well, from Antigua, since it's a colony, an ex-British colony, there's a direct flight to London, and from London then on to Santander. That ended up being the worst part of the trip because my flight was cancelled. And that was pretty much it. The adventure really started right there. It was the whole process of getting back by plane.
The captain typically serves as the ship's captain when he is in the Caribbean as well.
Yes, yes.
He would stay on, and then he'd take the family around. A lot of boats of that size normally have a captain and a crew member to handle all the maneuvers, so that if the owner wants to get involved, he gets involved. And if he doesn't want to get involved, he doesn't have to do anything. Does the owner of that boat have henchmen? Of course he does. I have always wanted to have some. Surely the owner may well have crossed the Atlantic at some point on his boat, but once he's actually done it even once, he'll say, "What for?" If I just want the boat in the Caribbean, I'll take the Concorde. And so, to be a bit more honest, and to go a little beyond the clickbait we're going to use, but huge in the thumbnail, like cross the Atlantic for free, just being honest. Okay, the trip itself is free. How much have you spent, or roughly how much do you spend? What do your living expenses come to?
Flights. The flight from here to Gran Canaria was 100 euros. Then the return flight, which was more or less, I don't really know how much it ended up costing me. 500. About 500 euros. And then the flight from London to here, which was also pretty cheap, was 80 euros. And then what we spent on food. Towards the end, we were buying food as if there was no tomorrow. Maybe around 200 euros on food.
Cheap vacation.
Food and drink.
And drinks too. And drinks, of course. Clearly, that's from the perspective that you're coming back by airplane.
Yes, of course.
Then you can stay there, do the season, which surely is possible, and become crew on boats in the Caribbean or wherever. There will be a number of charter fleets that relocate from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean to spend the winter season in the Caribbean. And that there will be professional Skypers there as well. The other option is to wait until April, May.
And you turn back into a boat again.
The thing is, they say that intersection isn't as convenient anymore.
No, it's not so calm anymore.
Plus, the weather can't be that good.
As for the heat, I think it feels a little bit cooler.
It's clear that what we always say on this channel, the ambition here, is to show that boating doesn't have to be expensive. Owning a 20-meter catamaran is very expensive, but you can sail for free on a 20-meter catamaran. You can sail for free by going to regattas. You can sail for free in lots of places. You can buy very nautical stuff, or you can do low-cost sailor DIY inventions and save a lot of money too. I'm trying to convince Marta that having a boat isn't that expensive. What's really expensive is having a slip. That's the real cost. But a boat isn't that expensive if you're sailing on it all the time. It's very cheap. Even cheaper than living anywhere else. Surely living on a boat on a 20-meter catamaran is cheaper. And honestly, the experience makes me terribly jealous. I'd be willing to take Carlos with me and everything. Have him pack his bag. Really take Carlos to cross the Atlantic. But yes, me crossing the Atlantic, I was going to bring all kinds of stuff, beer and whatnot. I'd come up with 200 inventions. I've got this little contraption to make a blue receiver, to listen to radio stations and satellites. I'd take lots of gadgets, and I'd still feel like it went too fast, like I didn't have time to do everything I'm saying.
That happens a lot.
From the point of view, like you say, of disconnecting, I would love to be able to disconnect for 3 weeks from life. And I think that's the true experience of crossing the Atlantic. From a sailing point of view, in day-to-day sailing, you actually face many more different conditions. Because every day you head out, it's a different wind, it's something different. And then, for example, from my point of view, in terms of how appealing the trip is, I like trips more like the ones Corto Maltese does with Alvaro Gonzalez de Aledo, where you have more stops. You're stopping every 2 days, you stop every day. But well, as an experience, I'm telling you, I'm really jealous of you. Ideally, we'd be able to make a living from this, right, Carlos? Because then we'd have a way to justify at home that we have to go for work. We really have to cross the Atlantic for work to record a video about how you cross the Atlantic and how you come up with inventions while you're out on the Atlantic. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm sick and tired of repeating myself 15 times. Get out of there, please, Marta. You're fired.
Thank you very much for your attention, sailors. I truly hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and click the bell so you'll receive notifications for all the next videos. There may be a link in the description to Capitan Jogi. Come, and we'll see each other in 2 weeks in the next episode of The Low Cost Sailor. Wait.